The protagonist has lived a really shitty life and is finally killed, but the goddess grants him reincarnation. She misunderstood him and he became a sapling. With every branch, he gains magic. With every root, he touches the world. He's not part of the ecosystem anymore. He is the system. Can a reincarnated tree redefine what it means to be alive? Let's find out. An adventurer father and his son are leafing through a book, all protected by the world tree. The son asked his father again, "The world tree? But where is this world tree?" The father thought about the answer, but said that somewhere deep in the forest, there is a small village where representatives of different races live. A spider dropped an apple from the tree to a boy who looked like a dragon. The happy boy picked up the apple and thanked the spider. He thanked the world tree and ran towards the village. Every villager wished the world tree a good morning and a good afternoon. Our hero's name is Kotonoha Sekai. He is a real hikikomori, a real hardcore slacker. He is simply an unfit member of society. He cannot even be considered a person. He never leaves the house, but on this day he had to do it. He completely forgot how to leave the house. In the store near the house, the seller was attacked by a robber with a knife. The robber demanded that she give him the money. The first feeling he experienced was worry for another person's life. Right before the protagonist's eyes, the life of the store clerk was in danger. He caught himself thinking that he had seen this girl somewhere. Was it Kaede Kasumi? They went to university together. MC had one-sided feelings for her. He didn't think he would meet her in such a place. He didn't talk to her directly, and she looked at him with the most suspicious look. The protagonist wondered why she even worked in this store. He stopped himself because there was no time to think about it. If nothing was done, she would die. Sakai rushed at the robber with a loud scream. The robber asked who he was. He plunged a knife into the protagonist's chest and said, "Die." MC was able to say so that Kaede would run from the store. As he was losing consciousness, he saw the store clerk running away. Thoughts flashed through his head that everything was fine. Everything was fine with him. His life in exchange for hers. Thank God. When Sekai regained consciousness, he saw a beautiful girl with a crown on her head and a floating cape in front of him. It was a goddess. She said that she was sorry that the protagonist's life ended like this. He protected the girl from the robber, but he himself died. But if he had not intervened, then even without his help, the outcome would not have changed. MC thought about the fact that he died in vain. The goddess answered that everything was correct. She was very sorry that this happened. She said that she appreciated his intentions. He was an ordinary recluse who put someone else's life above his own. It was a beautiful story. His life was a failure at all. Nothing changed until the very end. The protagonist thought about these words. He didn't want to admit it, but his life really was a failure. It was as if it never existed. The goddess apologized to Sakai. She shouldn't have reminded him of his painful past. She offered him reincarnation, but she needed his consent. She asked if he wanted a second chance in another world. Was he ready to take this opportunity? Reincarnation, is that isekai, like in the anime? MC asked about him being able to start his life over. He shouted, "Yes, please." The goddess said that before incarnating in another world, she would grant him one request. What would he want? Sekai thought about it. He remembered that he died from a knife stab and asked for the power that would not allow him to die from such a stab. He didn't want to die from a knife anymore. He wanted to be the strongest in the world. Wanted to be able to protect loved ones. He wanted to be exactly like this. The goddess smiled. A magical glow and mysterious circles appeared around the protagonist's feet. The goddess said that this was a wonderful wish, and now he would live in another world, like a mother's embrace, such warmth that you want to sleep. He died and was reborn at the same time. He felt like he was moving to a new level, overcoming humanity. When he came to consciousness, he asked himself, "What is this? What is this? What is he? Is he some kind of seedling?" When he asked for an invulnerable body that would not die, he did not expect to see this. And what kind of life awaits him ahead? Someone's boot stepped on him. MC was in pain. The big guy passed by and said that Art was annoying him. Someone like him should be crawling on the ground at their feet. Art was a skinny, short boy with a scared face. The big guy said that the farmer's children would remain farmers until they died, and he would become the village elder. He would get his way. The big guy and his friends laughed, and MC called the big guy an ill-mannered idiot. It hurt him because he was accidentally stepped on. Trying to get up, Sakai noticed that the boy was still nearby. MC expected that this boy would step on him too. Art asked the sprout if it was okay. Did it hurt when the big guy stepped on it? He felt sorry for the sprout and called it poor thing. Art made a fence of sticks around the sprout and said that now the sprout is noticeable and no one will step on it. He said goodbye to the sprout and left. The protagonist thought what a good boy he was and thanked him. Sakai thought that he would never forget this act. He wished for this boy to always be happy. Positive thoughts in the form of a beam of energy touched the boy. Art disappeared into the distance. Time passed. The sun was scorching in the sky. MC was thirsty. It was not raining, but the sun was scorching. If this continued, he would simply dry up. Sekai hoped that the boy would come and water him. A small slime appeared nearby, saw the sprout, and watered it with one wave. Sekai thought, what a kind slime. But was everything really okay? Because of this, the small slime's body became even smaller. The slime made sounds again, and MC thought how good it was. He thanked the slime, because thanks to this, he would be able to live longer. Sekai wished for this slime's life to be wonderful. MC himself didn't notice how his positive thoughts reached the slime. Then this slime started coming and watering the sprout every few days. It was collecting water somewhere because each time it came back big. Time passed and the slime kept coming back. It shared its positive energy every time it watered the sprout. The sprout grew. At the same time, in a small village, which is located near a growing tree. In a small chapel, children are standing in front of the priest. The priest said that today in the village of Pokot, there is a coming-of-age ceremony. Skills are a gift that they will receive from the goddess. In this village, when they turn 14, children must go through the coming-of-age ceremony. And then they will receive their skills. The priest added that when they receive skills, some of them can become adventurers. Art wondered what skill he can get. The priest said that he hopes that they will get the one that suits them the most. The children stood one after another and began to approach the priest one by one. The big man pushed Art and told him not to be stupid. The big man said that a person like Art will still receive the most useless skill, and he will receive the holy sword skill. Art nodded and said that he understood. The priest asked Art Gilbert to come. Art boldly climbed the stairs, approached the magic board. The priest told Art to open the status window and look at it. Art agreed. Art extended his hand. The magic board lit up. The light blinded everyone in the chapel. The status window read, Art Gilbert. Development rate 200%. Stat growth 200%. Immunity to negative effects. Physical capabilities 200%. Blessing of the world tree. The priest opened his mouth in surprise and said that he had never heard of such a thing. Art's skill level is UR. This is amazing. He congratulated Art on this. Everyone in the chapel was happy for Art. Someone said that this was amazing and congratulated him. Someone said that his mom and dad are proud of him. Someone just said, wow. Art was happy with the skills he had received. The big guy stood in the corner and told Art to pay close attention to what amazing skill he would receive. The priest invited Grud Pokot to come over. The big guy touched the board and opened his status. It said Grud Pokot, woodcutter. Skill level N. Grud was angry that he got such a low skill. The crowd in the chapel said that he was useless, although his father was the village chief. Skill N is humiliation. After the ceremony, everyone went home. A girl with a bow on her head caught up with Arth and asked about him leaving the village and becoming an adventurer. This girl's name was Beatrice. Arth greeted her and said that he didn't know yet if he could become an adventurer. Beatrice reminded him that he had a UR skill. He would definitely succeed. Arth said that if so, he would try. He raised his hand up and said that his skill was the blessing of the world tree. There was a small sapling growing in the forest. Perhaps this was the world tree? Arth received a UR skill, the blessing of the world tree. Later, he became a famous adventurer, and now 20 years have passed. Art retired and returned to his native village of Pokot. Art carries a small boy in his arms and wonders what the blessing of the world tree is. Is it because of the sprout that he got his skill? The boy asked, the world tree? Art answered, yes. Therefore one must always respect the world tree and be kind to it. The boy agreed. Art thought that the fence had probably already fallen apart and that a new one should be made. Art told his son to run ahead. He would come soon. The boy ran ahead into the forest. 20 years later, the sprout has also grown noticeably. Now it is about 2 meters tall. Now it will not die if someone steps on it. But the trunk is still thin. Lately, its growth seemed to slow down, and the protagonist did not understand why. The boy ran to the tree and asked himself, is this perhaps the world tree? The tree answered that it was not. His name is Kotonoha Sekai, and this year he would have turned 20 years old. The fence around the tree was really falling apart. The boy decided to remove the fence. MC asked the boy why he needed this precious little fence. The boy cleaned everything up and tidied up the area. The protagonist asked the boy what he was doing. All he had for 20 years was this little fence and slime. Why did the boy clean everything up? The boy stood next to the tree and thought about something. Then the boy thanked the world tree for its blessing. He thanked for the UR skill for his father. The tree asked, UR skill? What is it? The tree thought about how much this boy looked like the boy who put up the fence. Could this really be his son? Suddenly a voice was heard. Someone called a boy named Gil. A big guy with a sword on his shoulder approached. It was Grud's son, Burgu. He asked what Gil was doing. Why did he need this tree? He was going to practice with his sword on it. It was the most suitable tree. He rudely said that Gil was in his way. The tree was scared. Gil proudly replied that he would not let Burgu do that. Gil said that this was the world tree. In 100 years, it would become the great world tree. Burgu laughed loudly and asked, "Is this little tree the world tree?" Burgu grabbed Gil by the clothes and called him names. He said that if Gil did not move, he would cut him down first. Burgu swung his sword, but Gil managed to jump aside. Gil picked up a stick from the ground and asked Burgu to stop. He did not want to fight at all. Burgu swung his sword again, but was resisted by a blow from the stick. The sword flew out of his hands and stuck in the ground. Burgu, angry, started hand-to-hand combat. He swung his fist at Gil and told him not to get carried away. Gil picked up a stick in self-defense. Someone's voice was heard. "Enough?" It was Art approaching. Burgu politely greeted him. Art sternly told Burgu not to touch the tree. He asked him to be more respectful of nature. Art clarified that Burgu did not want to incur the wrath of Mother Nature. Burgu apologized and said that he was going home. Art looked sternly at Gil, then patted him on the head and asked that he use the tricks he taught him. Art praised Gil. Looking at Art and Gil leaving, the tree thought that they made him a new fence. It was cute, father and son. Sakai blessed Jill and hoped that he would be happy too. He thought, wasn't he called the world tree? After Jill left, the tree's life returned to normal. It would probably grow up soon, but its growth rate had slowed down. Would it be able to become a big tree? Or would it be a boring tree? A huge slime appeared from behind the bushes. Sakai was delighted to see the giant slime. The slime stretched out its arms towards the tree and began to water from both sides. Sakai asked, "Was this the same slime?" The slime kept watering the tree. Sakai thought how big the slime had become. Did it bring more water? Sakai thanked the slime and noticed that there were several small lumps of slime standing nearby. They directed the water at the tree from all sides. Sakai thought that he had just been watered, but each little one in turn watered him some more. Now this water would last the tree a long time. Sakai was grateful for the watering and sent positive energy to the slime family. Time passed. The tree noticed that it had grown. Now it was about 3 meters tall, but after a while, Sakai began to worry that the growth had begun to stop again. Maybe it was due to a lack of nutrients? A black wolf came out of the forest. He growled menacingly and approached the tree. The protagonist said that he was not edible. The wolf looked around, turned the back of his body and took a crap right under the tree. Sakai begged him to stop, but in response, he heard only a loud roar. Even the birds in the forest flew away from this roar. The wolf buried his feces in the ground. New shoots appeared on the branches of the tree. The protagonist thought that he had started growing again? And it's all because of the wolf's magical feces. They contain a lot of nutrients. Sakai thanked the wolf for the nutrients and sent positive energy his way. The tree wished for this wolf to be well. Time passed. Night followed day. The familiar wolf came out of the forest again, but he was no longer a loner, but the leader of a pack. The wolf apologized to the tree for that incident. The protagonist was surprised that the wolf could talk. Wolf said that he had behaved incorrectly and rudely. Sakai thought that the wolf had evolved and become much smarter. The protagonist said that everything was fine. Thanks to the wolf, he had grown up after all. The wolf understood that words were not enough and presented a gift in the form of the heads of many monsters. The wolf said that this would be excellent nutrients. This would be much better than feces. The pack of wolves asked to accept this gift as an apology. Sakai thanked him for the offering. Dead monsters really do have a lot of nutrition. This is perfect. The protagonist thought that he would grow even taller now. The wolves regularly came and left food for him. Thanks to this, he grew even stronger. And then after some time, a spider settled in the tree. The tree became tall enough. Its height reached 7 meters. One day, 2 woodcutters led by an elderly man approached the tree. The elderly man said that this tree had become tall enough. The protagonist agreed with him that he was big enough now. He himself could not believe that he was once a small sapling. The protagonist looked closely and thought that these people, judging by their clothes, were from the same village as the boy. He did not understand what they wanted from him, if he could help with something. The elderly man commanded, "Okay, chop it down." The protagonist was at a loss about what was happening. A spider descends from a tree on a web. An old man stands and laughs. Sakai does not understand why he is being chopped down and what bad he did. When one of the woodcutters swung his axe, sensing danger to the tree, a pack of wolves jumped out of the forest, stood in front of the tree and did not let the woodcutters in. They took a fighting stance and bared their sharp teeth. The woodcutters preferred to retreat to a safe distance. The tree was glad that the wolves came out to protect it. The old man shouted, "What's going on?" He said that they will not touch this tree and asked for forgiveness. The protagonist breathed a sigh of relief. This time he got away with it, but it was very dangerous. The protagonist thought, it's a pity that the wolves cannot hear his voice. If there is an opportunity, he will definitely thank them. Without realizing it, Sakai again sent positive energy to the wolves as gratitude for saving him. The woodcutters were walking through the forest and the man was muttering, "What a pity, such a good tree had grown. It would have been perfect, but what had gotten into the wolves?" One of the woodcutters pointed to another tree and asked the old man, "What about this tree?" The man replied that it was not comparable to that tree, but it was worth a try. A goblin flew out of the forest. He smiled maliciously, looking at the woodcutters. Time passed, and then the tree grew to 9 meters. One day, fruits ripened on it. The protagonist did not know what kind of fruit it was and could not eat it himself. It was just some red fruit. One day, a large slime came to see him. She came to water the tree. Isekai thanked her and decided to treat her to some fruit. He really hoped that she would like it. The slime ate the fruit and an incomprehensible glow appeared. But from the expression on her face, it was clear that the fruit pleased the slime. Then the slime seemed to catch fire and an explosion of magical power occurred. A king's hat appeared on the slime's head and a king's cape appeared on its body. Isekai realized that the slime had evolved. The slime began to talk. The slime thanked the world tree for its blessing. The protagonist is very glad that she liked it. MC realized that his fruit helps to evolve. Then, when the wolves brought nutrients, the tree also treated them to fruits. The wolves ate them with pleasure. All the wolves were covered in fire. And then they stood on their hind legs like people, and their bodies became embossed and pumped up. The wolves themselves were surprised by such a transformation. The wolf girls said that this change happened thanks to the tree. Another wolf said that this was undoubtedly the intervention of the world tree. The leader of the pack said that if they live here, they will definitely receive the protection of the world tree. Someone from the pack suggested that they should definitely settle here. The leader replied that it was a good idea. The wolf girl asked if the 4 of them could protect the world tree. The leader suggested returning to the den and bringing everyone else. They would all live together. The wolves thanked the world tree for the blessing and promised to repay it. The wolves began to walk on 2 legs. And what's more, they began to talk, and they also called the protagonist the world tree. Isekai thought that he had grown quite large, and he was probably one of the largest trees in the forest. And yet he thought that calling it the world tree was an exaggeration. After some time, a group of people came to the tree. Some of the people asked the Holy Father to hold on. Apparently, they were representatives of some church, and their priest was sick. The tree dropped 1 fruit to the ground. One of the ministers picked up the fruit and cut it into small pieces. The ministers offered the Holy Father to eat the fruit because he needed strength. The Holy Father ate 1 piece, then another, and caught fire from within. He stood up and had a lot of strength. The ministers asked what happened. The Holy Father answered that he did not know, but he had strength. This tree saved him. No doubt about it. This is the same sacred tree from the writings of Eldritch. The ministers began to worship the tree and say that this is a sacred tree and its miracle fruit. Someone said, "Long live the sacred tree." The protagonist watched everything that was happening and thought that it was good to be able to help people. He wondered what kind of religious group of people this was. He didn't understand what Eldritch they were talking about. A couple of days later, a new creature appeared under the tree's crown. It tried one of the magic fruits, but the tree threw him more because the creature looked hungry. Another magic glow, and this hungry lizard turned into a lizard man. The lizard man thanked the tree for its help. The protagonist wondered if it was worth giving so many fruits, because the lizard had evolved so much. The lizard said that as a token of gratitude, he would leave a stone of an incomprehensible shape. The lizard said that it was a precious stone called dragonite. It is produced in the body of lizard men for years. It is a special magic ore. The lizard said goodbye to the tree and thanked it again. He promised to definitely come back here. The protagonist thought that he would certainly appreciate any gift, but he wouldn't do anything with this stone. By the way, even those who hadn't met him before still called him the world tree. Maybe it's written somewhere that he is the world tree? MC decided to accept what the lizard left him, because he did it out of good intentions. A couple of days later, an unfamiliar face appeared. It was a man. He knelt before the tree and asked if he could take this stone. He begged to understand him. He is a merchant, and his name is Makoro Bolt. His comrades betrayed him and abandoned him alone in the forest. And the tree not only allowed him to take this stone, but also treated him to wonderful fruits. The man asked if the tree blessed him. He thanked him for everything and left. Later, the man came to the shop and showed his stone. The appraiser said that it was the legendary dragonite. He asked the man where he got such a stone, and in one of the books, the man saw a scripture about the magic fruits he ate. He went into the chapel, approached the priest, and asked what his status window was. There was no UR skill there before. Was it the blessing of the world tree? The priest showed the window and said, right, thanks to this, his luck increased 3-fold. The man thought about the fact that it was the world tree. One day, he returned to the tree, but with a cart of goods, security, and well-dressed. The man said that he was the same merchant whom the tree blessed the other day. He bought this land and decided that he would protect the tree. It was a small gratitude for what the tree did for him. The protagonist was glad that the land was bought, especially for him. Mokoro's assistants installed a sign saying that it was forbidden to cut down the tree. Now no scoundrels will covet it. Mokoro said that he was happy that he could repay the tree for its blessing. From that day on, the merchant's private army regularly patrolled the area, and as Mokoro had promised, they really did take care of the tree. But the peace did not last long. One day, a group of people appeared and started digging up the tree with shovels. The priest said that this was a sacred tree and it should grow somewhere else. The protagonist begged them to stop. The priest said that they would take the tree to themselves and take care of it. It was that religious sect. Eldwitch. One of the tree's guards shouted, "What are these people doing? This land belongs to Lord Mokoro." The sectarians were scared and ran away. Mokoro was horrified by what these people were trying to do. He asked the tree if it was okay. The protagonist thanked the saviors. For a while, Mokoro would protect the tree, and he would be able to live in peace. Winter began, and so after some time the tree grew to 10 meters. However, there were still quite a few problems. It was very cold because of the winter. It snowed every day, and MC could not protect himself from the low temperature. In fact, he gets cold even on regular rainy days, not just in winter. Quite a few different insects settled in his tree. It would be fine if they were cute insects, but most of them only harmed him. The protagonist understood that the insects also wanted to survive. He would not mind if they just lived here. But they crawled inside and devoured him. One of the inhabitants was still able to solve his problem. It was a cave spider. The protagonist learned the name of this monster from people who came to him and discussed the spider living in his crowns. Cave spiders, judging by the name, usually live in caves, so why did this spider settle here? MC was very grateful to the spider for its help. The spider ate all the insects that were sitting in his body. It turned out that spiders are very useful. The protagonist was not sure that his fruit would be enough as gratitude. After the spider ate the fruit, it evolved into a forest spider. After that, the spider stretched its web along the trunk, and the tree became warm. Thanks to the spider, the protagonist's life became much easier. They lived in a completely symbiotic relationship. One day there was a terrible snowfall. From the depths of the forest, a group of creatures appeared who were looking for salvation. They were goblins. One of the goblins suggested hiding from the snowfall here. MC was interested in why one of the goblins was more developed than the others. And only this goblin could talk. He said that he felt a mysterious power from this tree. The goblins said that they would build a new village here. The protagonist was surprised that the goblins would build a village next to him. A village under his crowns? The goblin shouted to the others to bring more wood, and quickly. The goblin children ran and carried logs. Apparently, the tree will stand in the center of this village. The goblins did not touch the tree. Apparently, they did not want to use its wood, because they were afraid of harming it. The protagonist thought that a couple of branches would not do any harm, and he decided to help the goblins. The tree threw down branches. The goblin was surprised. What was this? And he realized that this tree threw down a couple of branches to help. It was excellent wood. The goblin said that we should be grateful to this great tree. They built the village together. Everyone helped. Having finished the construction, the main goblin said that this would be their new home. The protagonist thought that his branches were of better quality than the others, and the goblins immediately appreciated this wood. They used it to build the house of the village elder. The goblins were shouting with joy. The protagonist looked at this from above and was filled with warm thoughts. The goblins made a fire. Some were singing songs. Some were playing instruments, and some were just sitting and warming themselves by the fire. The goblins decided to thank the tree for building the village. The elder said that this was a special goblin drink and offered the tree to try it. He poured the liquid directly to the roots of the tree. MC tried the drink and said that it was delicious. The development of the goblin village was going smoothly, but lately they had problems with food. So he dropped the fruits, and then the goblins ate these fruits. By eating these fruits, the goblins evolved into a great goblin. Those who did not speak before, now could also speak. Now they very much resembled humans. Until this point, all goblins were short, but now they became noticeably larger. The goblin girls also began to dress better. Their appearance was now cute, and the face was already hard to distinguish from a human. Among the male goblins, there were those whose bodies were noticeably stronger. Some of them resembled gorillas. If you think about it, they were already more like orcs. Sometimes at night they had a party and danced. The protagonist liked to watch it. And then the spiders that lived in his tree were able to find a common language with the goblins. He was very happy about this. They coexisted and there was no need for conflicts. Spiders also ate fruits from the tree. The first forest spider evolved further. It became Arachne. Arachne also gained the ability to speak. She was able to calmly communicate with the goblins, which strengthened their friendly relations. She often held conversations with the goblins. The protagonist also noticed how Arachne communicated with the goblin leader, apparently negotiating. It seemed that they were able to come to a mutually beneficial agreement. It was interesting to watch. Arachne and her spiders live above and the goblins below. Their habitats never overlap, so it will never escalate into conflict. The goblins made a deal with Arachne that they would provide them with their alcohol, and the spiders, in exchange, gave them clothes made from their webs. Most likely, it was the goblins who made this offer. In addition, the spiders made bed linen for the goblins, and in exchange the goblins built tree houses for them. An ideal relationship from which everyone benefited, and so the village of spiders and the village of goblins developed. The tree was bored, so it decided to give the goblins names. The protagonist named their leader Rind. He named the most hardworking goblin Gonzalez, the cutest girl MC named Henri. She was interested in sewing and therefore became close to the Arachne. The girl with the biggest breasts and the most stylish he called Clen. The shortest old man he called Gobchin. This is how he walked past him every day. Before he could blink, life was simply boiling around him. Recently, the goblins began to have problems with food again. Gonzalez said that the monsters here were very strong. If the goblins wanted to start hunting, it would be difficult. Henri said that there were also very few animals suitable for food. She asked the leader what they should do. The protagonist understood that over the past few years he had given away too many fruits to different monsters, and these same monsters had all evolved into humanoid creatures. Sorry, no, that won't do. It turns out that he had ruined the ecosystem here. What could he do for the goblins? Well, he can't move. Stop. Or can he? He moved his roots. It would work. Some roots came out. Maybe the goblins could eat his roots? Or maybe he could grow some vegetables from the roots, like daikon. Huh? Did it work? His root really did become daikon. He pulled out another root and decided to try growing strawberries, and the strawberries actually grew. He thought, really? That's amazing. Great. He pulled the roots out of the ground and tried to make a local vegetable garden. And after a few days, there was already a lot of food. The goblins came and saw it. One asked what it was. The other said he didn't know. Is this also a gift from the world tree? The first one said, exactly. He asked, is it edible? The second one said, we should try it. They tried it. The first one screamed with joy. What is this? The second one screamed, delicious. They called the others and said, these vegetables are very tasty. The goblins started to cook the vegetables. They tried the finished dishes and were delighted. Gonzalez said, a good aroma and taste too. The leader confirmed that it was great with meat. The protagonist thought, it seems like they like it. His roots are able to turn into any vegetable or berry. He solved the goblins' food problem in an instant. Some goblins were assigned to oversee agriculture. The goblin civilization continued to develop. The goblins said that these were very tasty vegetables. They thanked the world tree. They ate stewed vegetable soup and fed the elder. He thanked him for the soup. Someone called him and told him that one of the tribe had not returned yet. Goblins from a neighboring settlement had taken her somewhere. The elder was indignant. What? Gonzalez shouted that he would never forgive them. The elder stopped him. Wait, they do not yet know their exact intentions. They need to try to resolve this issue peacefully. Gonzalez shouted that he would not let them get away with this. He would crush each of them. The elder answered no. The protagonist thought, Henri really is beautiful. He understood the excitement of the other goblins. Arachne came down from the tree. The elder was surprised to see her. Arachne? She asked. Can she go save Henri with the goblins? The elder confirmed it, of course. He thanked her for her help and said that she would go with them. The village chief said that Gonzalez would go and talk to those who took Henri forward to their settlement. The village chief said that if the issue could not be resolved peacefully, then they would have to sort it out by force. Sakai thought, what a disaster. He hoped that a war would not break out. Let everything be resolved peacefully. After some time, Gonzalez and Arachne returned. Gonzalez informed the village chief about this. He laughed and said that nothing terrible had happened. MC thought that was pretty fast. The village chief asked, is everything okay? Was Henri not harmed in any way? She herself answered that she was fine. Suddenly, pleas for forgiveness were heard. But there were goblins from another village. They were tied up by Arachne's web. One of the prisoners said that recently the monsters had become so strong that it was difficult for the goblins to hunt. They just wanted to eat. Gonzalez was indignant and asked, and for this, they decided to kidnap their comrade? Rind said, but the monsters really became much stronger. Hunting was almost impossible. Henri stood up for the prisoners and said that the thing is that things are very bad in their settlement. She turned to the headman and asked if there was any way to help the neighbors. The headman was surprised and said, even so. Well, if this does not happen again, then they need more workers and something can be thought of. The prisoners thanked the headman. On this day, the goblins celebrated Henri's return. A new day is a new holiday. Goblins celebrate at every opportunity. Henri was probably scared and they wanted her to get better. After the holiday, Gonzalez and Henri met alone near the tree. Sakai was happy. Wow, is this what he thinks about? This is definitely it. MC began to envy. Gonzalez gently hugged Henri, but the tree cannot go anywhere. Well, he can at least watch the goblins making love. After a while, a sound was heard. Pew pew. The protagonist was happy. Here comes the slime. He didn't think they would come to water him again. The goblins understood that the slime did all this for the tree. They always greeted and supported the slime. The slime, hello slime, good job, thank you for working for the world tree. MC understood it was good. He didn't want there to be a conflict between the slime goblins. So far they were getting along well, so time passed. At some point, Sakai noticed a girl sitting nearby on a rock. He thought, how long has she been looking at him? It seems her name was Miyako. He asked her, young lady, does she need something? He knew that no one could hear or understand him. He was a tree. But Miyako answered, thank you, nothing. MC was surprised. Did she answer him now? He was a tree. Can anyone hear his voice? He was confused. Could she really hear him? She answered him again, confirming it. She said she could hear him loud and clear. And not only that, he was surprised. Miyako said she could see his form. He was even more surprised. Seriously? She could really hear him? But the others didn't seem to hear him. Why could she hear him? Miyako chuckled and thought. Then she said she didn't know, but most likely their magic power was on the same wavelength. He was surprised again. On the same wavelength, is that how magic power works? When the goblins settled next to him, he began to grow much faster. As if, without realizing it, he was feeding on their magic power. It was like breathing oxygen. He was absorbing their magic power. He asked her, so because their waves matched, she could hear what he was saying? She happily answered, probably. He said that if she could hear him, he would be able to talk to everyone. She asked, does he want to talk to everyone? The protagonist answered, of course, he's wanted to for a long time. He was bored. He had no one to talk to. Every day he could only watch. Miyako asked if she should be the translator. He thanked her for it. So Miyako was appointed the priestess of the world tree. After some time, she told the chieftain about it. REINCARNATED was surprised and asked her, she is not lying now, is she? She really hears the voice of the world tree? She puffed and proved that she was telling the truth. He asked, does the world tree hear him? Can it somehow confirm this? If this is true, REINCARNATED asked the tree to drop something. An apple immediately fell on his head. He took it in his hand and said, wow, they can talk to the world tree. That's right. Everyone should know this. REINCARNATED asked, if the tree does not mind, then he would like to gather everyone and tell them about it. Miyako said that the tree does not mind. REINCARNATED said, great, and went to call everyone. So he gathered everyone to tell the news. He suggested starting a conversation with the world tree. He turned to the tree and asked if the tree wanted to ask them something. Miyako passed it on to the tree. Then she asked the leader how Gonzalez and Henri were doing. The leader was surprised. Who were they anyway? Sakai understood. That's right. These were the names that only he gave them. Miyako said that the world tree gave everyone names. The leader was surprised. What? Is that true? Wow. He asked to give them names and they would remember it. Sakai decided, well, since the goblins are asking, they should name them. The leader was surprised. His name is REINCARNATED, a wonderful name. The goblins were happy. The girls said that the tree knows a lot about names. The leader has a wonderful name. Another goblin was happy and shouted, hooray! He now has a name? REINCARNATED said that if you think about it, it really was inconvenient without names. Sakai thought, it seems like the goblins liked the names. Then, Miyako turned to Gonzalez and Henri and asked how they were doing. They were a little scared and embarrassed. Miyako said that everything was clear. She turned to the tree and said that the couple was doing well. Sakai replied that he was glad. The goblins had a good and peaceful day today. Some more time passed like this. One day, Benjamin returned from hunting and not alone. The chieftain greeted Benjamin, welcome back. The chieftain asked what was wrong with his hand. Benjamin replied that the prey was simply resisting. Benjamin said that he had brought an orc with him. REINCARNATED was surprised. Oh, what a huge orc. Benjamin confirmed and said that the orc seemed to have gotten lost. The orc said that Ode had gotten lost. Benjamin helped him. Ode had come here to them. REINCARNATED said that he was glad to meet them. They had not met orcs for a long time. This was a new part of their history. He invited the orc to follow him and said that he would show him the world tree. They approached the tree and showed it. Miyako conveyed the words of the tree. Orcs are a small race. They are much rarer than goblins. But unfortunately, orcs are not very smart. Because of this, orcs have a hard time in life. The chance of survival is low. Every year there are fewer and fewer of them. Orcs have always been good warriors. They are the main fighting force. Goblins are good at thinking, but even so, they will never defeat humans or dragons. But goblins can make orcs allies. Then they will be able to coexist and increase the chance of survival. REINCARNATED said, in short, the orc is now their new comrade. He is their important fighting unit. They want to call him Org. REINCARNATED turned to the world tree and asked what the tree thinks. Miyako said, Sekai thinks it is a good name. Rind was happy. That's great. From now on, the orc will be called Org. Welcome. Org thanked her in return. Mika handed Org an apple and said, "The world tree wants to give this to Org as a greeting." Org knelt down and accepted the fruit. He threw the apple into his mouth and began to chew. A glow formed around him and Org evolved. He turned to the world tree and to Mrs. Miyako and thanked them for the treat. He said that it was a very tasty fruit. Then he turned to Mr. Benjamin and Mr. Rind and said that he would be happy to live with them. Rind responded in kind. So time passed. The village grew. One day, Sekai saw werewolves in the distance. He decided, are these the werewolves he thinks of? He looked closer. Yes, they were. They brought him various carrion to give him nutrients. He had not seen them for a long time. It was nice to see them again. The werewolves saw a large village under the tree. The goblins saw the werewolves and were scared. The werewolf leader growled and was indignant. What was going on? Who were they? How dare they build a village under the crowns of the world tree? What impudence! Another werewolf called the goblins green dwarfs. MC got scared. Oh no, a fight is about to break out between the goblins and werewolves. Ryan turned to the werewolves and asked menacingly, "What are they doing here?" Gonzalez and Org prepared to attack. Gonzalez shouted, "Who are they anyway? This is a goblin village. Flea-bitten ones better pass by." Sekai didn't know how, but this had to be stopped. He shook his branches hard. Gonzalez shouted, "You see, the world tree is angry." Sekai didn't mean to say that at all. Everything is very bad. He saw Miyako. There she is. He turned to her and asked her to stop everyone. She said that she understood and ran to the leaders. She called Rind and repeated the tree's request. Rind asked again, "What? Is it true?" Miyako confirmed it. Rind turned to Gonzalez and asked him to stop. Sekai realized that these werewolves were his own. Gonzalez was surprised. "What? Really?" He immediately stopped provoking and calmed down. Sekai thought, thank God that Rind was able to calm Gonzalez. But now he had to somehow calm the werewolves. The werewolf leader asked again, What did they say about the world tree? Or did the goblins finally chicken out and want to get out of the werewolf's way? The parasites that nest near the world tree. He still wouldn't calm down and wanted a fight. The werewolf child turned to him and said that it was true. She said that what the goblin girl had told him was all true. The world tree didn't want them to fight. That goblin girl could hear the voice of the world tree. She was its priestess. The werewolf leader was surprised. What? He asked the werewolf girl. Could she also hear the voice of the tree? The girl confirmed it. He asked again, really? She confirmed it again. MC realized that there was also a girl on the werewolf's side who could hear his voice. Maybe children are generally predisposed to this? Thank God. Sekai ordered them not to quarrel. The girls said, okay, they understood. They turned to the world tree and asked if the tree had anything else to say. Sekai decided that he would communicate with the two of them. The girls took each other's hands and handed it to their leaders. The world tree was asking them not to fight and to coexist together. The werewolf leader agreed, of course, if the tree said so. He turned to the girls and said that it seemed that they really heard the voice of the world tree. Then he turned to Rind and said that he apologized for yelling. He almost did something stupid. He thought that they were bad guys who wanted to use the world tree. Rind responded by saying that it was the goblins who should apologize. They were also immediately hostile. He suggested that they stop chatting here and go with them to the village. The werewolves agreed. Sekai was happy. Werewolves and goblins found common ground. They decided to hold a meeting in Rind's house. Then they went out and the werewolf leader announced, well, it's decided. Werewolves will live in this village. They will coexist with the goblins and protect the world tree together. Everyone was happy about this. And then the goblins held a welcoming party for the werewolves. At first they were hostile, but now they were able to become friends. As a result, werewolves now live in this village. Goblins, arachne and spiders, one orc and werewolves now live here. Sekai named the leader of the werewolves Wolf, and he named the girl who could hear his voice Mimiko. Goblins and werewolves got along well together, because werewolves are carnivores and do not eat vegetables. But all werewolves had great strength. Even in this forest, they could hunt well. Therefore, they regularly went hunting in the forest. Thanks to this, the goblins were also able to eat meat more often, and they were happy about this fact. Werewolves were good warriors. They could also hunt easily. Goblins were famous for their intelligence and construction skills. Everyone was useful to each other. Arachne and her spiders made clothes and bedding for everyone. Everyone was warm and happy. Of course, the werewolves have fur, but it was still hard in the cold winter. But thanks to the clothes, it became easier. And so for some time, their joint settlement continued to develop. The slime did not yet know that werewolves had appeared in the village. And this time, it was not the usual slime that came to water it. This time, the queen came. The leaders saw her and were surprised. She said that she had not been to this village for a long time. Rind was surprised. What? What did she need? She answered that she was a slime girl. She came to water the world tree. She asked him, did they find themselves new neighbors? Rind was surprised and asked, is she the same slime in the crown? She confirmed it and said that her children usually came here. He was happy, that's what. He asked her to pass and be a guest. The werewolf leader apologized and said they did not know that she was going to the world tree. She told them that it was okay. Sekai understood. Right, he was now being watered by this slime. Apparently, she had evolved again by eating his fruits, and now she had acquired human features. Even though she was a slime, she was still cute. Sekai decided to name her Catherine. She came to the goblin chief. Rind asked her what business she had with him. She asked if they could live here too. Rind answered, of course, he didn't mind. She said that they had fun here, and she thought that they could all coexist together. She said that they could do many things there, right? They could clean up waste, remove toxins. That's how they came to an agreement with Catherine, and the slime also settled in this village. Sekai didn't mind. In fact, he also owed them a lot. Ryan showed her the house and said that they had prepared this house for her. She was happy and thanked Rind for that. When Wolf went fishing, he always invited Catherine to come along. She happily agreed. Catherine and her slimes lived peacefully in this village and everyone got along with them. And the village by the world tree now had one more race of inhabitants. Someone was watching the village near the world tree. Miyako was reporting something to Rind, waving her arms emotionally. The senior patrol leader said that everything was peaceful today too. It was time for them to return with a report to Lord Makoro. His partner supported him in this decision. Suddenly, someone attacked their squad. It was a squad consisting of members of the Eldritch Church. The leader of the church squad asked the opponents who they were. Were they from those who wanted to take the sacred tree? Without waiting for an answer from their rivals, they attacked the Makoro patrols. The senior patrol entered into battle with them, but his partner had a different opinion. She asked her ally to be careful, and with the help of magic held back the attack of the church members. When the magic worked, she shouted to her comrade that they were leaving. Standing in the center of the magical teleportation, the allies disappeared. The squad of church members was at a loss. Where did they go? The leader shouted that those freaks had escaped. The church detachment returned to their holy father. He asked them in bewilderment, what was the matter? What was all that noise? The squad leader reported to him that things were bad for them. The other forces had also moved out. There was no doubt that they were targeting the sacred tree. The squad leader said that they would get rid of them. So far, neither side had sent reinforcements. They were almost ready to fight. The Holy Father cursed. Some adventurers wanted to get ahead of them. What a nightmare. But this was a good opportunity to declare their power. They would not give them the sacred tree. There was no time to hesitate. They needed to move out now. He raised his fist above himself and called on his brothers to recapture their sacred tree right now. The members of the squad, inspired by the words of the Holy Father, enthusiastically accepted his call. When they approached the place where the sacred tree grew, they were amazed. Not only was some village built near the tree, but they were also met by a squad consisting of different races. The leader of the squad exclaimed in surprise, "What is this?" Rind and his allies looked warlike and were determined. In response, he menacingly asked the visitors who they were. Let them not approach their village. The Holy Father stepped forward and said that they are the Eldritch Church. But how dare they, filthy monsters, build their village here? Let them immediately return the sacred tree to them. His squad took an offensive stance and put forward their swords. Gonzalez noted that they were such selfish words. The world tree does not belong to anyone. Rind agreed with him. He added that in order to appropriate the tree for themselves, the opponents had gathered so many people. When the opponents rushed to attack them, Rind gave the order to his allies not to let the enemies get closer. He, Gonzalez, and behind them was the brute orc. When the opponents saw who was in front of them, they were amazed. It was a high orc. Wolf joined the allies, and the members of the church were dumbfounded in the literal sense of the word. The main squad of the church was amazed, and there was not only an orc here. The opponents rushed at the allies, and at that moment Arachne used her magic. She created a magical shockwave, and the opponents were simply thrown back. After Arachne, Org stepped forward. With one wave of his paw, he created a shockwave, which caused complete amazement of the opponents. They were thrown even further. The Holy Father exclaimed in bewilderment, "Why are all the monsters together? This is not normal." He cursed and ordered his unit to retreat. The allies rejoiced. Everything went just fine. Victory was theirs. At that moment, Miyako appeared. She noted that it was a good job and added that the world tree wanted to talk to them. When the leaders of the races approached him, Sekai conveyed his gratitude to them for being able to protect him. Rind objected. What was the tree talking about? He was protecting them. Of course they would protect him. He added that, thanks to the tree telling them about the enemy's arrival, they were immediately ready for battle. Without it, they themselves would have been in great danger. Sekai replied that in fact, he heard the sounds of battle when the church members attacked the Makoro mercenaries. Thanks to this, it became clear that something was wrong. It was good that he was able to warn them, but still, the Eldritch Church is such persistent and annoying people. The tree expressed doubt that they would give up so easily. The morning after the church's attack, Makoro came to the village with his men. Sekai thought that the locals considered the humans to be enemies, but he still thought that they would not be a problem. He made it clear to Rin that they could relax. The merchant was not dangerous. Rind asked him if he was sure, but since this was the word of the tree, he had no reason to doubt his words. When Makoro entered the village, Rind asked him what the humans wanted from them. All the leaders of the allied races were standing behind him, and the merchant was at a loss. He asked them to wait. He explained to them that they did not come with bad intentions. Rind noted that it did not seem like the merchant was lying, but it was better for them not to come closer. If they wanted something, then let them speak from where they were standing. The merchant agreed to this condition. He asked Rind if they were also protecting the world tree, if he was not mistaken. The thing is, he was one of those saved by the tree. So they were on the same side. Rind assumed that Makoro was telling the truth. The merchant continued that they had no intention of harming the tree. They wanted to protect it. He asked his allies, hadn't they seen the sign that stood under the tree? He had put it there. Besides, these lands belonged to him. He had bought this territory so that no one would harm this shrine. The merchant continued that they had also protected the tree from the psychos who had come here yesterday. Rind asked him, was that true? So they had been watching them too? Makoro replied that it was all true. They had been watching their village for quite some time now, and so they realized that none of them had any intention of harming the shrine. On the contrary, they had done everything to protect it, so they had not interfered in their lives. He noticed that they were humans, and those standing before him were monsters, so they had decided not to approach them. Rind replied sheepishly that their people had been attacked by members of the Eldritch Church yesterday. These visitors were more persistent than they thought. They were also more dangerous than they thought, and they had even decided to attack. They would most likely return with more people next time. The merchant said that since the situation had become serious, he was proposing that they join forces. What would they say about this? Would they cooperate to protect the world tree? Rind asked for time to think. After some thought, he noticed that the merchant's offer was indeed tempting. They also wanted to protect the world tree. But would they gain any other benefit? Humans often deceived them. Makoro took something out of his bag and asked the leader to look at it. He handed him a bag and asked Rind to smell what was in the bag. He took the bag and asked the man what it was. Rind then sniffed the bag and said that the smell was familiar to him. After untying the bag, Rind asked the merchant in surprise, was it pepper? Makoro replied that it was. It was spices, one of the goods he sold. He asked them what they thought about it. Spices were a hot commodity in the human world, but they were monsters. They could not enter the city, and they had no money. They had high intelligence, they even built such a good village here, but they had no one to trade with. So, he offered them to trade with him. Rind was surprised. Trade? Makoro explained to him. As Rind could see, he was a merchant. If they built a trade relationship, they would be able to get new products to their village. If they agreed to this, their village would be able to develop further. Rind admitted that it did sound interesting. But he was tormented by the question, what is the benefit for the merchant then? Can they give him something unique in exchange? The merchant said that he has werewolves as allies. They are excellent hunters. This can be useful for people. You can get a lot of valuable things from hunting. For example, fur and bones can be sold. Rind understood everything. He replied that then they will do business. He also noted, goblins grow vegetables, right? This is also an excellent product. Catherine added that she, as a slime, can provide the purest water. The merchant noted that in the world of people, pure water is very highly valued. He asked the villagers, do they see how much they can give? Such pure water as after purification by slime is quite difficult to find. People pay a lot of money for such water. Rind was surprised by this. He added that Arachne and her spiders will be able to provide beautiful clothes. The merchant asked them with admiration, do they see this? The value of their village is enormous. Then he asked Rind in a business-like manner, had they come to an agreement? Rind replied that the merchant was right. It was hard to refuse in such a situation. He happily shook Makoro's hand and said that they had come to an agreement. They would cooperate. Then he offered his new ally to continue their conversation in his house, to which the merchant happily agreed. When they approached Rin's house, Makoro saw Miyako, greeted her. He asked what her name was. The goblin leader told him the girl's name and added that she was a priestess of the world tree and could hear his voice. The merchant was surprised. Was that true? Miyako answered him that it was, and continued that Sekai wanted to talk to him. Makoro was even more surprised, like, Wow! He turned to the tree and warmly thanked it for hearing him. Thanks to it, he became a big merchant. He was very grateful to him. And also, the merchant always wanted to thank him for what he did for him. Sakai replied through Miyako that he should thank Makoro. He had helped him a lot in his time. He had already done enough for him. He had put up a sign and protected him from crazy sectarians. Thank him for that. Then the tree turned to the warrior who had protected it. He had even been wounded. Let him forgive him. Sakai handed the warrior an apple and asked him to take this gift. When the soldier bit into the apple, he was amazed to see that all his wounds had healed right before his eyes. The warrior thanked the tree from the bottom of his heart for such a wonderful gift. Sakai turned to the merchant and told him that he wanted to ask him something. He did not interfere in the affairs of this village, because he had foreseen that such a thing could happen. Makoro answered him that this village was a good trading partner. In addition, thanks to this settlement, it was much easier to protect it. The protagonist was surprised. He did not drive out the goblins. The merchant noted that he would not say that it was so. He overestimated it a bit. He had not even thought about it. That was how Makoro and the villagers made their agreement to protect Sakai, the sacred tree. And at the same time, they began to trade. The merchant left them a couple of his people as observers and messengers. They were given a place to live. Now, even representatives of the human race began to live among the locals. After the deal with Makoro, life in the village became more comfortable. Spices and seasonings appeared, and as a result, there were more dishes. Until now, the food of the villagers was simple, but now everything was different. The food began to look tastier and, in fact, taste better. And the craft began to flourish. When the first batch of equipment arrived, Rind, Wolf, and Gobchin opened their mouths in amazement. Thus, weapons and tools appeared. For example, axes and shovels. Everyone was simply delighted. The villagers had been using simple tools before, but they were limited to what the goblins could make from the materials they could get from the forest. By the way, all the goods were of unrivaled quality. And the goblins really liked the alcohol of the humans. When Rind first tried this drink, he noted with admiration that it was very tasty. The merchant smiled and said that if he liked it, he could bring more of this product next time. Rind was delighted and warmly thanked his ally. When Makoro brought an even greater variety of drinks, the goblins drank almost all day. Everyone liked the new life in the village. And so, several years passed. Sakai grew into a huge, beautiful tree, at the foot of which the village grew. He had felt big before, but now he was simply gigantic. It was an impressive sight. He even began to think that he was some kind of deity. There was nothing in this forest that was bigger than him. Sakai considered himself to be quite the biggest in this world. And the village had also developed significantly and noticeably expanded. It could already be called a small city. Its own shops, stalls, and cultural places appeared. In addition, the forest also became noticeably larger. As the city expanded, Sakai began to worry that it could harm the forest around it. Was it because of the energy it emitted? But apparently there was no need to worry, because now, from his height, he could clearly see how gigantic the forest had become. They began to call it the Great Forest of Rarejano. Why did they choose this name? There were rumors that it was named after some legendary dragon, but no one knew the details. The village also underwent changes in terms of personal stories. Rind and Miyako, the same girl priestess of the sacred tree, got married and had a child whom they named Ek. Despite the age difference, they still got married because their love was mutual. Miyako grew up to be a very friendly and kind girl. She always remained polite. Their wedding was held on a grand scale. The grown-up Benjamin drank too much alcohol that day and even danced naked. Almost all the villagers envied Rind. After all, he took such a young bride for himself. And yet, the village respected him very much as a reliable leader. Also, Gonzalez and Henri tied their fate forever. They also had twin children, a boy and a girl. They were given the names Rick and Sora. Both had a talent for physical activity. When Gonzalez watched his children training, he shouted with delight that his children were great. His blood was immediately visible in them. Sora raised a club and told her father that she would crush a boar's head with it. When the twins were born, the villagers also held a celebration. But the most surprising of all was Benjamin's wife. He married a werewolf priestess, that same Mimiko. She grew up very demanding and fair, and now she approached her husband and called out to him sharply. Benjamin jerked in surprise and asked her what was wrong. She got angry. He was even asking. He said he would look after Emerald, didn't he? Mimiko flew at her husband like a fury, with a stick in her hand. He fought her off and said that he just forgot about it a little. Their child was half goblin, half werewolf. They named him after the precious stone, Emerald. In fact, this child became the first representative of the wolf-goblin race. The leader of the werewolves, Wolf, married the most beautiful werewolf girl. Her name was Hannah. And they also had a child. They named him Jonas. He will have to become the next leader of the werewolves. Changes have also occurred in the pack of spiders. Under the auspices of Arachne, a new species of spiders has developed, jumping spiders. They had a small body and great mobility. They were responsible for reconnaissance in the forest. In addition, several orcs in the village also increased. New orcs came to the village. Fortunately, some of them were females. Therefore, they were able to create families and give birth to children. Right now, there were 15 orcs living in the village. Their wives and their children took on the duty of protecting the village. These desperate defenders could give anyone a worthy rebuff. Changes also occurred in the tree itself. One day, Sekai felt himself shaking with a small tremor. He thought, what is happening? He shook even more. The villagers also felt a change in aura and shaking. Suddenly, the tree was illuminated by a bright light along its outline. Not far from the village, on a hill, there were elves. Ella noticed this light and said that, without a doubt, this is definitely the world tree. She and her squad raised their hands up, and they activated magic circles above themselves. All the elves seemed to have fallen into some kind of trance, continuing to stretch their hands to the sky, saying something like a spell. The villagers were completely confused. What was this? Rind told them that he had no idea what was going on. The elves came, and suddenly a magic circle appeared. Miyako angrily asked the visitors to stop their actions. She asked them what they wanted. Ella irritably called them pathetic and insignificant monsters, and added that they would destroy them right here. The elf girl created a powerful magical vortex. She shouted, "This is so that no parasites interfere with the life of the world tree." Then she called on the magical vortex to destroy the opponents. The sky turned black in an instant. Everything around shook. At that moment, Sekai called the elves to stop. Ella was amazed. The world tree was talking? She stopped her magical attack, and with complete delight asked, "Was that beautiful voice his?" "It was her, Ella." Sekai was surprised. Could she hear his voice? All the elves cried from the excess of emotion, and noticed that they could hear everything. They were elves, the people chosen by the world tree. As long as the world tree existed, this world still had hope. Sekai was surprised. It seemed that all the elves could hear his voice. Great, then the conversation would be quick. He admonished them that fighting was forbidden. The elves were amazed by his words. Ella pointed her finger at the villagers and was indignant, saying that they were monsters. At that moment, the girl's mouth was covered with a silk web. Arachne came down to them. She called on everyone to calm down, adding that everyone here lived in peace. Sekai said that if the elves were on his side, then it was better for them all to get along with each other. Ella did not even dare to resist anymore. If the world tree said so, who was she to argue with it? She turned to the goblins and continued that she wanted to apologize to them for calling them insignificant and pathetic monsters. She also apologized for the trouble they caused them. Miyako thought indignantly, did she say that they were insignificant? Rind was confused by the girl's deep remorse, but then said that everything was fine. Miyako asked them why they were here. Were they somehow related to the world tree? She added that this tree wanted to ask them about it. Ella asked Miyako in amazement, did she understand the world tree? The girl calmly answered that she did. Ella said that the previous world tree was already dead. Sekai was surprised. What did she say? But it became clear to him, it turned out that he was the next world tree, and there was another one before him, and it was already dead. Ella explained that the previous ISEL tree had died recently. So they went in search of a new one. They had traveled a long way before coming here, and they were dumbfounded when they saw that a city had been built around the world tree. Sekai thoughtfully noted that the world tree was dead. He asked Ella, what is a world tree then? How many of them are there in this world? The girl answered that there can only be one such shrine in this world. The largest tree in the world becomes the world tree. So when it became the largest tree in the world, the previous tree immediately withered. Sekai thought, so it turns out that the previous tree died because of him. He said out loud that the goblins had called him the world tree before. The elf girl answered that most likely they felt that he was destined to become the new tree. It was something like a premonition. The protagonist was surprised, is that so? But it was still his fault that the previous tree died. He really felt sorry for it. Ella protested with a smile that it wasn't his fault at all. That was their world, it was already predetermined. When something new appears, the old one will inevitably die. It's the natural course of things. The protagonist thought, that's how it was. Ella continued that they, the elves, would no longer try to harm the city. Rather, on the contrary, they were glad to meet everyone. The protagonist noted that he didn't mind them staying, but what did the goblins think about it? Miyako replied that they didn't mind either. The elves were the people of the world tree, so they couldn't just kick them out. Sekai understood everything. He expressed hope that they would get along with each other, and so the elves joined the city. Everything was decided rather quickly. The case was closed. It seemed that they knew a lot about the world tree. The protagonist hoped that they would tell him a lot. Ella turned to him and introduced Sekai to all the elves. Their names were El, Aaron, Alina, He thought that the elves introduced themselves to him, but they all had similar names, and it would be difficult to remember them. Each of them had a perfect face with no distinguishing features. To be honest, it was hard for him to tell them apart, but they were all extremely smart, and they also had magic. But would they be able to get along with werewolves and goblins? He was worried about this. As it turned out, in vain. They quickly found work in the city and earned themselves a place. They could instantly light a fire without anything, only with their magic causing surprise among the residents. Wolf was pleased that they could create an ice container in which meat could be preserved, and they could also dry laundry quickly. But when the elves came, it turned out that there were no houses for them. Miyako apologized to them for the fact that for now they would have to stay in the conference room. They did not have a free house for them. Ella asked, reasonably, if there are no houses, can they build new ones? Rind answered that it is true. They, goblins, know how to build well, but they do not use magic for this. They will not be able to build a house in one night. First, they need to prepare the materials. This will take several days. Ella objected to him. She did not say that goblins should build houses. Rind was surprised. In what sense was she talking now? She answered that the world tree can help with this. With its power, houses are easy to build. The girl asked the tree if it will help them. Sakai was not against it, but even though she says so, what can it even do? The most it can do is shed branches. Ella asked him in amazement, does he still not know all his capabilities? With the power of the world tree, building houses is a simple matter. The previous tree built a lot for them, and not only houses. The protagonist was surprised. He did not know that it could do this. And how was he supposed to do that? The girl explained that the old tree changed the shape of its roots. That's all. An entire house could be created from its roots. Now it made sense to him. Roots. Wow, he hadn't even thought about using roots like that. He had already used them before, turning them into vegetables. Could he really turn them into more than just vegetables? The protagonist asked his allies to wait a bit. He wanted to try doing something right now. He gave himself the task of sticking his roots out to the surface. When the protagonist did that, a whole solid house grew before the amazed eyes of the residents. Rind couldn't believe his eyes that it had all turned out like that. Benjamin was also amazed. That was something divine. An entire house in an instant. But then something went wrong, and the house immediately fell apart. The residents were perplexed. How could that have happened? A house built by the world tree. Ella noted that it seemed like the protagonist hadn't yet reached his full potential. Despite his size, he was still growing. The previous tree also failed the first time. The protagonist chuckled to himself. In other words, he still has room to grow? Perhaps he needs to use his imagination more, then he can do much more. But he still felt a little offended. He thought he had succeeded in creating a house right away, but it fell apart so quickly. Too bad, he wanted to be useful. Out loud, he apologized to the villagers for being so incompetent. Rind objected. What was he saying? Let him not consider himself as such. Besides, it was all worth it. Although the house fell apart, they got the building materials. They would simply reassemble it. In other words, they would save a lot of time than if they had built it from scratch. Sakai sighed and said that he understood everything. He was going to try to do it again. He put out some roots. Rind noted that this could also fall apart, but he did not see anything terrible in that. They should have just strengthened them, that's all. Then they will quickly build a simple house. Ella noticed that it was a good idea and thanked the city leader. And so, the protagonist created a foundation with roots, and the goblins strengthened them and continued construction. And so, after a few hours, the goblins built houses large enough to spend the night in. In addition, the protagonist also gradually began to understand how this ability works. Very soon, the goblins' help was reduced to a minimum, and they were able to create a beautiful house. Rind was sincerely amazed that it was simply amazing. It would have taken them a lot of time to build such a huge, solid house, but the tree finished it in an instant. Benjamin noted that it was also the first time they worked together with him with the world tree. Ella expressed her gratitude to everyone who participated in this. Since they finished building the houses, they wanted to take a bath. She asked Rind, "They have a bath, right?" The city leader asked in surprise, "What is that?" She laughed at first, and then she asked irritably, "Did they not have a bath in the whole city?" Benjamin, confused by her reaction, answered that there was a river next to them. It was enough. Ella was indignant. Not enough at all. Now that he said it, she began to clearly see the dirt on their dirty bodies. Rind said in amazement, she imagined it all wrong. The girl irritably told the tree that they needed to build a bathhouse right away. Sakai replied that he would try. So, at the request of the elves, they decided to make a bathhouse. As before, he created the building materials, and the goblins assembled everything together. This construction was carefully supervised by the elves. With their magic, it was easy to carry heavy materials. In cooperation with the goblins, the construction went smoothly. and the elves could boil hot water with the help of household magic. And so, a few hours later, the public bathhouse was finished. Its appearance made the eyes of everyone who looked at it shine. It turned out very beautiful. When Rind and Wolf went inside, Rind noted with admiration that an entire building with hot water was truly luxurious. Wolf exhaled at how hot it was. Ella suggested that they try immersing themselves in the water. They would immediately understand that it was much more effective than bathing in the river, and much more pleasant. The allies agreed to try it. When a large bathing bowl was filled with hot water and various oils were added to it, Rind and Wolf immersed themselves in it. Needless to say, what bliss they experienced from taking a bath. Their admiration and pleasure knew no bounds. At this time, Ella also took a bath, enjoying the water. Rind shouted to her that it was very cool. She laughed and noted that, of course, this is part of their elven culture, a bathhouse. Then it dawned on her that his voice was somewhere nearby. The elf turned around and saw the city leader with Wolf. She screamed hysterically, "What are they doing here? There is a male half of the bathhouse for them. Let them go there." Rind was amazed, like, is there still a male half? Ella got angry and used her magic skill to send them to their part of the bathhouse. So, with the arrival of the elves, culture came to the city. In the bathhouses, men began to bathe separately from girls. But just in case, there was also a mixed bathhouse, for the elderly or for families. The innovation was accepted by the townspeople with a bang. Sekai sighed and thought that he was very tired today. He would also like to plunge into the hot spring, well, or at least in cool water. It was late evening, the city was resting. The protagonist heard the sound of someone's feet and saw Ella with her allies. They had buckets of water in their hands. He thought with gratitude that they had spent a lot of effort for this. When they approached him, Ella turned to him and said that he had done a lot for them today. They had no words to express their gratitude to him. He was probably tired, he should have a good rest. The elves poured life-giving moisture on his roots. He thought with pleasure how nice it was. He was alive again. The next morning, he realized that he was still tired. The protagonist wondered, was it because he had used a lot of strength yesterday? It looked like that. Such a powerful force cannot be used without limits. You need to connect your imagination, use your head. If he had a brain, he would be tired. Here the protagonist was puzzled. Maybe a tree even has a brain? When he created vegetables, he was not so tired. The house was much larger, and he was creating more than usual. He also felt like he had shrunk a little in height because of the roots he was using. He needed to practice more before he could use this power effectively. And there was one more thing that had appeared with the arrival of the elves. It was elven alcohol. Wolf really liked this drink for its sweet taste. He could feel the heat spreading throughout his body after drinking it. Rind was curious how they made it. Sekai thought that according to rumors, elven saliva was needed to make this drink. Well, all elves were beautiful, so it was not a problem. Their alcohol also had a health-improving effect. It supposedly extended life. The protagonist watched his allies enjoying this drink and thought that it was not that important to all of them. Everyone loved alcohol here, and they were happy with it. The number of residents in the city had noticeably increased. They even settled in their own neighborhoods. It looked something like this. In terms of quantity, there was one world tree, there were 150 goblins, 90 werewolves, 30 elves, 25 humans, 5 arachnids, many other spider-like monsters, and 15 orcs. There was also one slime girl, many slime-type monsters, and 5 wolf goblins. The arachnids lived on the crown of the world tree, and the race districts were located at the foot of the tree. The people of the merchant Makoro, who settled as observers, at first did not understand how one could live side by side with monsters. But now they have become friends with everyone. By the way, if someone asks the main character why he does not tell you about the arachnids, everything was very simple. They lived at the top of the tree, not at the bottom, and did not communicate with those at the bottom often. They ate its fruits, constantly evolving, and they liked to sew clothes. Therefore, they got along well with everyone. Not only their place of residence, but also their habits were different from everyone else. The arachnids preferred to go down only on holidays, several times a year. By the way, regarding holidays, the elves prayed every evening. They surrounded it every evening and offered their prayers. Perhaps it was some kind of custom of theirs? The protagonist decided to find out from them. He asked them why they prayed. They do it every evening. Something should happen? Ella answered him with a question. Doesn't he know? Faith is necessary for the growth of the world tree, isn't it? The protagonist was surprised. Is that true? It turns out that they pray for it? Ella said that it was. The more believers the world tree has, the greater its power. He thoughtfully said, so that's it, and thanked them. By the way, if you think about it, it always grew when various creatures thanked it. It turns out that it is their merit. If you think about it, they are all grateful to it too. Ella noted that he should have accumulated enough faith and power by now. She asked him to show them his appearance. Sakai was surprised. In what sense? He was right in front of them. Ella replied that when he accumulated a lot of faith, he could summon his avatar. If he did, he would be able to move around and act freely. The protagonist was amazed. Was everything she had just said true? He could do that too? If she was telling the truth, he would be very happy about it. Ella spread her arms and called on the world tree to show them its true appearance. Then the elf folded her hands as if in prayer and continued that faith is the main source of the world tree's power. The more beings worship the world tree, the stronger it becomes. With their faith, it can create real miracles. They have been praying to him for several days now. He must have accumulated enough faith by now. With it, he can create a humanoid clone, and in that case, he will be able to move around freely. The protagonist asked her excitedly, "Is this really possible? And how can he do it?" The elf replied that it was very simple. Just like he created a house. First, he needs to prepare a body. To do this, he needs to create a person using the roots. He can try it now? The protagonist couldn't believe it. Was she serious? He could create a person? Wouldn't it be a violation of the laws of nature? Ella assured him that everything would be fine. There were no taboos for the world tree. The previous world tree had already done this. Sakai said that he was still very worried, and yet he plucked up his resolve and replied that he would try to do it. MC released his roots outward. They were enveloped in a magical haze. The elves saw a human body on the ground in awe. The protagonist was amazed. Did he really manage to create a human body? It seemed that he could even add small details. His roots were even more versatile. He could create not only houses and vegetables. Is there really nothing impossible for his power? A head and arms began to emerge from the outline of the body. Sakai thought that if he could create everything as long as his imagination allowed, then he could create truly terrible things. Now he needed to imagine a human form, but he hated his appearance from his past life. In the past world, he looked like the last idiot, but now he wanted a better body. He didn't need that battered and unhealthy body. Besides, none of the locals looked like a Japanese person. It turned out that he was the only Japanese here. But he didn't like this option. And also, he had to look cool. In his past life, he often played fantasy games. He could remember some hero from there. The protagonist began to sort through images in his head that suited his taste. He thought that in order not to stray too far from his real appearance, he could add features that were in his appearance before, and also take some features of elves into his new appearance. He continued to create his new body. He got something between a Japanese and an elf. He thought, something like that? The protagonist was amazed by his creation, but he noticed that the person he created now looked more like a corpse, which was hard to look at. But it seemed that the elves were satisfied with this option. They looked at the one he created with admiring eyes. So, everything was fine? He asked Ella what he should do next. She answered that now he just needed to occupy this body. To do this, he needed to concentrate on it, direct his magical power and faith into the vessel. The protagonist did everything as the elf said. Then he asked her, "Right?" A magical line appeared on the trunk of the tree. He released his root and touched the created body with it. His appearance opened its eyes and slowly assumed a sitting position. The elves were in complete shock, not believing their eyes that it had actually worked. The protagonist slowly raised his hands. They worked as they were supposed to. Suddenly, from a fountain of emotions, he jumped off the ground and shouted that he had succeeded. He enjoyed his new state, because from the moment he was reborn into a tree, he could not take a step. But today, a new page of his life will begin. Now he will be able to walk. Ella emotionally shouted that this was amazing. It was very cool. Rind and Wolf began to approach them. The leader of the villagers asked her what was going on here. What was that noise? Meanwhile, Sakai decided to check if his body was working normally. He checked all his limbs and functions step by step. Everything was just fine. He was amazed that he was indeed a human. Only his height was shorter than in his past life. Now he was the height of a high school student? The protagonist asked the elves if they had a mirror. The amazed Ella handed it to him. When he saw his reflection, he couldn't help but think that he was handsome. He could now move and do whatever he wanted. First, he wanted to try the local delicious food, and then he wanted to travel around this world. He wanted to read the local books, but most of all, he wanted to relax and go to the bathhouse. Ever since they built it, he envied the residents every day. The protagonist couldn't hold back his satisfied laughter. At that moment, Rind couldn't believe his eyes. Was this the world tree? Was this the appearance of the world tree? Sakai thought that he needed to greet them in this appearance. He waved his hand at them and asked them if they would be acquainted. Rind, having recovered from his amazement, grabbed the protagonist by the arm and leg, lifted him up, and shouted that it was wonderful. Today they would throw a welcoming party for the world tree. The elves were embarrassed, because when Rind lifted the protagonist, the fig leaf covering the interesting place fell off the ladder. Sakai had no choice but to cover his nature with his hand. Then he noted that celebrating was not necessary. He thought at the same time how much they loved to celebrate. Ella objected to him. This was definitely a serious reason to celebrate. He was the master of this city, and he was finally able to show everyone his appearance. She pointed out her elf girls, Wolf, Rind, and said that each of them wanted to talk to him personally. Today they would definitely drink together. As a result, that evening, the residents threw a welcoming party for the protagonist. Until late at night, the townspeople had fun and drank wine, treating the protagonist to it. Each of them rejoiced that the world tree had shown them such a miracle. Ella, pouring wine for the protagonist, asked him if he liked it. He answered that, to some extent, yes, but he liked drinking with them more. When he was a tree, alcohol also seemed tasty to him. But drinking it like this, in human form, is even more pleasant. Ella happily answered that they are very glad that they have come such a long way, and finally they can drink with him, with their master. MC answered that he understands her. She asked him what his name is. The protagonist was surprised. Name? Ella answered that it is so. They can't always call him master or the world tree. He said that he needs to think about it. In the past, his name was Kotonoha Sekai, and now he will just say his name. But this is a different world. In fantasy worlds, there are also names that sound like Japanese. The protagonist decided that this is how it should be and told Ella what name he had chosen for himself. His name would be Kotonoha Sekai. He smiled at the elves and said that he was glad to meet them. The elves were surprised by such a name, but accepted it. Ella addressed him as Mr. Sekai and continued that she would remember this and never forget it. So the protagonist decided, after all, to call himself by his real name. This would symbolize his new beginning in this world. After that, he talked about many things with Rind, Miyako, and the others. This was the first time he saw this city and its inhabitants through the eyes of a human. He had a feeling that this was his hometown. He also felt that there was a place for him in this city, because he was greeted very warmly here. The welcoming party was over, and he finally found his place, which he had dreamed of for so long. He came to the bathhouse and sank into the water with pleasure. How many years had it been since he had taken a bath? How good it was to relax like this and not think about anything. He loved taking baths. At such moments, he felt like his soul was being cleansed. At that moment, the door creaked. The protagonist thought, who could be there? Rind? But when he saw those who entered, he was amazed. Elves came to him, wrapped only in towels. He was indignant. Why did they come here? This is the male half, isn't it? They began to go into the water to him. Ella said that everything was fine. Today this place is only for him. Besides, he looks like a child. The protagonist exclaimed, so what? The girl replied that they are elves, the people of the world tree, let them rub his back. All the elves went into the water to him. He thought, why is this happening? The protagonist lamented that he did not even have anywhere to look, and what was he supposed to do? The elves began to twist him from side to side, accompanying this with their requests. The protagonist began to break free and stop them. Despite his protests, the girls continued to do their thing. Ella, having rubbed his back, asked him if he liked it. Then she touched his shoulders, wanting to give him a massage, and asked in surprise why he was so tense. Was it because he had only recently started moving? One of the elves, the protagonist, did not understand who exactly, because they all looked the same, told Ella to rely on her. She would give him a foot massage, and he would relax. The girl grabbed his legs and began to massage his feet. She noticed that his feet were so tense too. He tried to break free from their hands, asking them to stop, but it was all in vain. From the street, an indignant protest was heard from the protagonist. Finally, when everything was over, MC admitted that, although it was uncomfortable for him, the elves were really good at massage. He felt his mind and body cleansed. Ella finally asked him if they could do it again sometime. Sekai asked her where he would sleep tonight. She laughed and told him that, like always, he could create a new home. Coming out of the bathhouse, he enjoyed the fresh air and his magical state of cleanliness and relaxation. Suddenly, he heard a noise and turned to its source. The elves were approaching him again. He asked them why they were there. Ella replied that they remembered that he had nowhere to sleep. If he didn't mind, he could sleep in their house. The protagonist categorically refused their offer. He added that, as Ella had said recently, he would try to create his own home for himself. She noted that since he had settled in, maybe he would be able to build a magnificent mansion for himself. The protagonist thoughtfully answered that everything was possible. After all, he had managed to create a human body. He thought that his ability to create seemed to be getting stronger, but to use it, he would have to return to the form of a tree again? That would be troublesome, to be honest. But should he use his roots like that? When he changed his roots, they themselves did not shrink, but the magic power and the power of faith decreased. This is something that cannot be seen with your eyes. Sometimes the world tree itself also shrinks in size, but now its outward size did not change. He carefully examined the tree, and once again confirmed this. On the contrary, it even grew. So in other words, the main resource is not the roots, but faith. The protagonist looked at his hands and wondered if he could use these abilities at all in the form of a human. At that moment, in addition to the elves, Rind and Miyako also approached him. The protagonist chose a place for construction and decided to try to do it here. He stretched out his hands and concentrated all his strength on his imagination. Roots suddenly began to grow from his hands. He felt something coming out of them. Now he had to stretch the roots further and give them a shape. He was very focused. If everything was working so far, how far could he go? He decided that he would try to do this further. This time he was motivated to build a house for himself. At least it would not fall apart. The elves, holding their breath, watched his work in amazement. At the same time, he noticed that, as he thought, his own body did not become smaller. Suddenly, a real house began to form from the roots that were growing out of his hands. After a while, everything was ready. In front of him and those present stood a magnificent, huge mansion. Ella, with great amazement, told him that it was simply amazing. At that moment, his strength seemed to leave him, and he sat down on the ground, saying that he was very tired. Ella sat down next to him and said that it was a good job, and he should leave the inspection of the house to them. The protagonist was grateful for their concern, because he himself was not yet able to do anything further. He still felt tired. It seemed that he had consumed too much faith, but if he slept, he would feel much better. Rind was thinking about something. Ella said that this was the effect of him taking human form to communicate with everyone. She asked him anxiously how he felt. He answered her that he felt how people's faith in him had increased even more. Communication through a translator did not have such a huge effect on people. The protagonist jumped off the ground, shook himself, and assured Ella that he was as fit as a fiddle. He thanked her for her concern for him. The protagonist thought that it was easier for them to see him than to feel his presence. And he, too, felt that his strength was growing. Rind, meanwhile, carefully examined the protagonist's house and noted that it seemed that all parts of it were stable. Leaving the house, he told Sekai that he could safely enter his house. The protagonist praised the Lord and entered his personal house with trepidation. He was already dreaming that now he would be able to get a good night's sleep. But then he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw that the elves had entered behind him. He asked them in surprise why they were following him. Ella answered that it was all logical. They were the people of the world tree, so they would take care of him, and so they would live with him in the same house. The protagonist was amazed. That is, it was not even a request. The girl explained to him that they lived together with the previous tree. She spread her arms out to the sides and remarked, "Such a spacious mansion. There will be room for them here, right? Besides, it is simply impossible to manage such a large mansion alone. They will do everything here, starting with cleaning." He still tried to object, because they have their own houses, right? She answered him that everything is fine. There are quite a lot of them. If some of them move, then the remaining half will have more space. Ella saw his puzzled face and sadly asked, "Is he forbidding them to do this?" The protagonist looked at her and thought, how can he refuse such a sweet and upset face? He answered that he agrees. They can choose their own rooms. The elves happily thanked their master for the favor shown. The protagonist told them that he was going to bed. In anticipation, he opened the door of his room, entered it, but again could not fully enjoy his sensations, all because this crazy crowd of elves entered with him. He asked them why they were still following him. Ella replied that it was obvious. He would be lonely sleeping alone. MC was indignant. What did she say? Was she serious now? He categorically refused and ordered them to go to their rooms. The elves pressed themselves against each other and said that they were lonely without him. They were asking him for mercy. They would not fall asleep without him. The protagonist reluctantly agreed to this. Ella noticed that he was able to understand them. She thanked him for this and took his hand. The protagonist pulled his hand away and told it to stay put. So suddenly, sleeping in the same bed was impossible. Seeing her frightened face, he added more gently that they needed to come to this gradually. She smiled. She understood him. "We need to start with hugs first, right?" The elf hugged him tightly. He began to break free from her embrace. Ella kissed him on the cheek and wished him good night and sweet dreams. He thought, she hugged him so tenderly. For him it was a completely new feeling. Even in his past life it was not like that. Lately there were more elves. They began to occupy a significant part of the city. But it turned out that elves do not eat meat at all, and the vegetable reserves were gradually running out. And then Ella came with a proposal. She asked maybe they should create large farms? The protagonist thought about her proposal and found it rational. Until now there were only small vegetable gardens. Such vegetable gardens cannot be called full-fledged farms. At that time, he still did not really understand how his ability worked. But now that he mastered it well, he could easily create larger farms, and he could also improve the variety of vegetables. Before that, he only knew the vegetables that he encountered in the past world. But now, after trading with Makoro, he could grow vegetables that only grow in this world. Each time he tried to grow something new, and he succeeded. He said that he would put large farms on the outskirts of the city and plant different crops on each farm. Rind greeted his idea with delight. The guy exclaimed that this was great news. Thanks to this, they would never run out of vegetables. Moreover, they also decided to build greenhouses. Also, all vegetables needed different amounts of water. Luckily, the elves taught him everything. One day, he wrote down his plans in a notebook and said that he would like to speed up the growth of the crop. Ella answered that he could do this too. The protagonist was surprised. Was she telling the truth? The elf gave him a large vessel with roots and said that this is a legendary growth stimulator that their family preserves. MC doubted, but for sure, everything will be fine? Ella answered that he should not worry, it will not affect the taste. He asked her, is this not too valuable? She noted that it was so, but there was no need to worry about that either. There was a way to mass produce them. The protagonist was surprised, right? And what was it? The elf replied that he could create it. Everything became clear to him. Indeed, with his ability, it was possible to create growth stimulants without any problems. The protagonist resolutely said that he would try. He stretched out his hands to the vessel with the stimulant and concentrated. A few seconds later, next to the first vessel, there was already a second one, exactly the same, with similar contents. He was amazed. He had succeeded. Now he needed to scatter it. Entering one of the greenhouses, he scattered the stimulant over the beds. Isekai was pleased. Thus, with large farms, they would no longer need vegetables. Ella added that they would also be able to sell the surplus to the Makoro merchant. MC looked at the vessel and thought, after all, this growth stimulant is an amazing thing. Ella agreed with him. Such was the power of the world tree. He thought, apparently, in this world the world tree is an all-powerful creature, and this power is very interesting. He wanted to try something else. At that moment, the protagonist heard the creak of wheels and thought that a merchant had come to visit them at the right time. Makoro, when he saw the protagonist, was stunned. He exclaimed, so this is his true form? He said that the protagonist looks like a god. He was so happy to see him. The protagonist felt mutual joy from their meeting. Sakai showed the merchant their farms and treated him to fresh vegetables. Makoro noted that their fresh vegetables as well as wine from the elves and goblins turned out to be very popular with people. Everyone is happy that they can buy such rare products. The protagonist noted, by the way, he made wine from the world tree. The merchant was amazed. Wine from the world tree? The protagonist explained that his resin was used for it. Therefore, leaves of the world tree are also added to it. The locals called this alcohol the world tree wine. This drink is very tasty and relieves fatigue. It became a popular thing in their town. The merchant tried this liquid and said that it was really very tasty. It would definitely sell. The protagonist grinned. And then, when Makoro was about to leave, the protagonist praised him. He did a good job. Makoro thanked him and added, he will come back and start selling the world tree wine. His cart set off. The merchant in his town put this wine up for sale for 99.99 cents. One of the customers asked him if this was too much for wine. Makoro was indignant. What was he saying? This wine is made from parts of the world tree. It is a special alcohol. The customer, after some thought, took one bottle of wine. Sheena, the merchant's assistant, invited the customer to come back to them again. After the workday, she went home. Entering the house, she went into the room of her sick father. Edward informed him that she was home. In her hands was a bottle of drink. She told her father that she bought an unusual drink. It was called wine from the world tree. Surely it was very tasty. Edward thanked her. Having poured wine into a mug, he looked at the liquid and noted that he did not have much time left, but at least he could drink alcohol. Sheena's father noted the amazing color and aroma of a drink. It looked very beautiful. Sheena answered her father, saying that in fact, the doctor said that he should not drink anymore, but one cup would not do anything. Her father chuckled sadly. He agreed with her. At least he could drink, which he liked. But then, something incredible happened. Edward, having drunk this drink, suddenly felt full of strength. He jumped out of bed, to which he had been chained for a long time, and exclaimed in amazement, "What is this?" He literally felt how his strength and health were returning to him. Sheena was so surprised that she couldn't immediately say anything clearly. She was amazed. Her father could stand? He screamed even louder that he suddenly felt so good. When the doctor came to him for another examination, he couldn't believe his eyes. It was impossible, but his patient was completely healthy. The doctor examined him very carefully, then summed up that his illness was gone. Edward himself was in a state of shock. It was amazing. It was all thanks to the wine. He turned to his daughter and thanked her, because all this happened thanks to her. Sheena couldn't hold back her tears of joy for her beloved father. The next day, Edward came to Mokoro's store with his daughter. After telling him his story, he thanked the merchant for such a valuable product. Mokoro couldn't believe his ears. He asked him again, was it true what his dear customer had just said? Sheena confirmed it. She said that when her father drank this drink, he immediately felt better. Edward said with feeling that they were really very grateful to the merchant. When they left, the merchant took the bottle of wine in his hands and said that this was something amazing. He needed to immediately tell the protagonist about this. He saddled his horse, and after a short time, he was already in the city of the World Tree. When he told Sekai everything, the protagonist grinned like, so that's how it is. The merchant asked him what they were going to do. The protagonist answered that he, in principle, did not mind, let him heal. The merchant asked him if he should continue selling it. MC did not see a problem with this. Why not? Mokoro understood everything and thanked his ally. And so, the merchant decided to sell the wine of the World Tree. The drink that cured any disease sold well. It also restored former strength and healed wounds. Adventurers began to buy it instead of various potions. The inhabitants of the city were cured of their diseases, and cries of joy were heard from everywhere. And if you take it like regular alcohol, the taste was also excellent. In the blink of an eye, the wine of the World Tree became popular. They say that later, this wine became a legendary elixir, but that was a completely different story. At this time, the fame of this drink reached the dwarves. The most important of this team, named Redaf, tried this drink and was pleased with it. It was very tasty. His partner said that it seemed that the merchant brought it from the forest. Redaf grinned and noted that it meant that they would also look into this forest. Having quickly gathered, they set out on their way and very soon reached their destination. At this time, Rind yawned and muttered that it was time for him to finish his rounds. He needed to go to bed. Passing by a wine warehouse, he heard some sounds coming from there. Opening the door to the warehouse, he saw a small group of old men who were drinking wine straight from the barrels. Surprised, he menacingly called out to them and asked who they were. Ridaf, wiping his lush mustache from the drink, said that it was simply a masterpiece. The protagonist and Mokoro's assistant came running to Rein's cry. The assistant checked all the barrels and exclaimed in despair that all the expensive alcohol was gone. Ridaf replied that it was a great honor to receive praise from them, the dwarves. The protagonist asked him in amazement, who the hell were they? The old man answered his question with a question. And who were they? Locals, or someone else? The protagonist answered in bewilderment that he was the World Tree of this city. The old man laughed, hugged the stunned protagonist and asked him for forgiveness. He explained that they simply could not hold back when they saw delicious alcohol. The old man added that they, dwarves, had a good nose for such things. Sakai emphasized, dwarves? So these short old dwarves? He had heard that they really were fond of good alcohol. It turned out to be true. The merchant's assistant continued to lament. He lamented that the visitors drank everything. How could this be? Mokoro would yell at him. Ridaf scratched the top of his head and apologized to him in a guilty voice. He asked if they could do something as an apology. They could make a couple of tools. The protagonist became interested. Tools? Ridaf, like a hero, ordered his team to get the field forge. His companions responded in unison, and then everything started spinning. The chief dwarf asked all three to step back, and gave the command to his companions to begin. Blacksmithing equipment appeared in the warehouse out of nowhere, and everything started working so instantly and unexpectedly that everyone stood in amazement. Bellows, anvils, a furnace, coals, everything functioned with such speed and scope that the protagonist said in bewilderment and surprise, where did they get all this? After a while, Ridaf exclaimed that everything was ready, and raised an amazing-looking shovel over his head. He asked the owners what they would say. Rind, turning the shovel in his hands and examining it, admiringly noted that it was, indeed, an amazing thing. Better than what could be bought from them, the quality is several levels higher. Then he took the axe, which the old men also made. After twisting it this way and that, Ryan concluded that this axe was much easier to use. Surprised, Sekai thought, it seems that these old people can make their work easier. Ridaf, laughing from the praise, said that he was glad to hear it. Did they want him and his team to make anything else? Swords, staffs, bows and spears, whatever they wanted. He turned to the merchant's assistant and asked him, well, would this do as an apology? The assistant, twisting the thing he had made, noted that it was simply amazing. If you put this shovel up for sale, you can earn a very decent amount of money. Rind turned to Ridaf and said in amazement that they had created real treasures. He asked them to teach this to their people too. The old man noted that this was not a problem, only the alcohol had run out. Rind was surprised. Were they not drunk yet? Ridaf replied that it was. The protagonist asked them if the people of his city would throw a party and drink all night. The old man couldn't believe his ears. Really? After all, they had already drunk everything. The protagonist assured him that there was nothing to worry about. Since they were here, they could drink absolutely everything. After a while, he thought that this team had no evil intentions. Well, they had made tools too, so they were still in the black. Well, and you can always make more alcohol. At the moment, they had woken up everyone, and a massive drinking bout began, so to speak, a welcoming party for the dwarves. Their leader, Rydaf, had drunk more than anyone else and was incredibly happy about it. From time to time, he laughed good-naturedly and repeated that he really liked their city. Wolf, who had also drunk quite a bit of the drink, invited the old man to stay and live with them.